They said we were going to Hawaii, the whole family. Sun, surf, celebration. I asked what time the flight was. My father looked me straight in the eyes and said, "You don't need to know. You're not part of us." That was the moment everything cracked. For 35 years, I fixed things. I stayed behind, held it all together while they lived. That night, I walked away. No suitcase, no goodbye. This is not a story about revenge. It's about vanishing and starting over in a place where no one knows your name. Let me tell you what happened next. The golden sun dipped behind the pine trees that lined the quiet suburb of Eugene, Oregon. String lights flickered above the Morgan family backyard, fluttering gently in the breeze. A country song hummed low from a wireless speaker while kids darted across the lawn, chasing each other around the picnic tables. It was supposed to be a celebration, Harold and Carol Morgan's 40th wedding anniversary. But for Ellie Morgan, the eldest son at 35, it was just another shift he wasn't getting paid for. Wearing a grease-stained apron and gripping a spatula like a weapon, Ely flipped burgers at the grill, wiped tables, adjusted light strings, and chased toddlers with hands full of frosting. No one offered help. His siblings, Matt with his booming laugh, Lily chatting about yoga retreats, and Jake glued to his phone, were wrapped in their own worlds, laughing, sipping wine, taking selfies with their spouses. Their children clung to Eli whenever they needed something, and like always, he quietly obliged. Harold, broad-shouldered and holding a beer, stood center stage on the patio. With a dramatic clang of his bottle against a fork, he called for attention. "Next week," he announced, voice booming with pride. "We're all going to Hawaii, whole family, sun, sand, the works." Cheers erupted. Kids screamed, adults clapped and whistled. Ellie's heart fluttered. Maybe this time he was included. He wiped his hands on a towel and walked up, trying to sound casual. "What time's the flight? I should check with my work schedule." Harold's eyes flicked toward him, voice cutting through the cheers like a blade. "You don't need to know," he said loud and clear. "You're not part of us." Silence. Just the faint rustle of grass. Carol let out a dismissive chuckle, waving it off like Eli had asked for too much. No one stepped in. No one looked surprised. Lily stood frozen. The laughter resumed, but it didn't reach him. He slowly untied his apron, folded it with robotic calm, and placed it on the table. Turning, he walked toward the driveway. Lily called after him, "Ely, are you okay?" But he didn't respond. He climbed into his old truck, the engine sputtered alive. In the rearview mirror, his reflection stared back, blank, hollow. As he backed out, the backyard remained bright and lively, celebrating without him like he'd never been there. Ely drove through the night. The highway stretched ahead like an endless ribbon beneath a faded Oregon sky. Streetlights blurred past as the towns disappeared in his rearview mirror, each mile putting more distance between him and the life he'd just left. At 5 a.m., he parked his truck at a remote station and boarded a northbound bus. Destination? Astoria, a place he remembered once passing through, quiet, sea-stained and full of fog. By mid-morning, Astoria unfolded around him like an old postcard. Wooden houses with chipping paint clung to the hillside, seagulls called over creaky docks. The air smelled of salt and rust. He found a room above a bar, bare bones, mattress on the floor, shared bathroom down the hall. He unpacked slowly. 2 shirts, a few tools, and a torn family photo that he shoved into the drawer without looking. Needing work, he wandered the marina until a sign in a cafe window caught his eye. Help wanted. No experience necessary. Inside, a bearded man grunted, nodded, and told him to start tomorrow. That's where he met Sheila Torres. Short hair, sharp tongue, fast-moving, no nonsense. "New guy, huh?" she said, sizing him up. "Survive today and I'll buy you coffee." Eli fumbled his way through the shift, spilling creamers, mixing up orders, drawing a few curses from the regulars. But he endured. After the rush, Sheila slid a cappuccino toward him, said nothing, and walked away. That night, wandering through Asteria's old town, Eli passed a dusty pawn shop. Something in the window made him stop. An old Canon camera sat there, scratched but dignified. The owner barely looked up. "College dropout pawned it," he grunted. "You know how to use that." Eli handed over $40 and took the camera. At dawn, he sat alone on the pier. The wind was sharp, the water restless. He lifted the lens and clicked. The photo came out blurry, but it was his, and for the first time in years, it felt real. The morning light in Astoria bled slowly through the streaked window of Eli's room. His phone buzzed on the chipped nightstand, a text from Sophie. "Where are you? Everyone's freaking out. Mum's in tears. Trip's cancelled." Eli stared at the screen until it dimmed. A minute later, the phone rang. Dad. He didn't answer right away, but something in him clicked. He pressed accept. "You disappeared," Harold's voice barked down the line. "The kids need watching. Where the hell did you go?" Eli didn't raise his voice. He didn't match the heat. He just said it flat. "I'm not coming back. I'm not the one holding the house together anymore." Then he hung up. He sat at the tiny kitchen table, head bowed, fingers tracing the edge of the old camera beside him. Rage, sadness, numbness, guilt, they all swirled in his chest like oil in water. 20 years of being the dependable one, and this was the first time he allowed silence to follow rejection. That evening, after another long shift at the cafe, Sheila invited him to grab a bite. They sat by the marina, paper burgers in hand, watching the tide roll in. She asked him about the camera. He told her about high school, a dream that slipped away. "There's a guy I know," she said, nudging his elbow. "Paul Richmond. Runs a photography group every Thursday. You should go." Eli didn't say yes, but he didn't say no. The next Thursday, he brought a few prints to the group. Paul, tall and wiry, flipped through the shots quietly. "Rough edges," he said, "but real. There's loneliness in these frames, and it's honest." He handed one back. "We've got a local exhibit coming up. You should submit something. First-timers welcome." That night, Eli returned to his room, pulled back the curtains. The town outside was dim and sleepy. He placed the camera on the desk like it was something sacred, not just borrowed. For the first time, he wasn't holding it to prove anything. He was holding it because it gave something back. And for once, he had something worth protecting. Something that belonged to no one but him. The bell above the cafe door rang low. It was early, sunlight just beginning to claw through the mist, and the place was still quiet. Eli stood behind the counter, towel in hand, wiping down the espresso machine, when he looked up and saw a figure in the doorway. Stiff stance, weathered coat, familiar scowl. Harold Morgan. Sheila glanced over and whispered, "That your dad?" Lee nodded once. "Yeah." He stepped out from behind the counter and motioned toward a table by the window. They sat. The silence stretched. The wind rattled the glass. Neither spoke for the first 10 seconds. "You left," Harold finally said, not angry, just tired. "Didn't even say goodbye. Your mother cried for 2 days. Ellie kept his eyes on the table. "I cried for 20 years, Dad. You never asked." Harold shifted in his seat. "The family needs you. We couldn't go to Hawaii. The kids, everything fell apart." "I'm not the glue anymore," Eli said. "I stopped being the fix-it guy the moment you said I wasn't part of the family." The air thickened. Eli leaned forward, his voice lower. "I gave up college to cover your mortgage. I rebuilt your garage, watched their kids, held everything together while you all played happy family, and no one, not once, asked what I wanted or saw me as a person." Harold opened his mouth, then closed it again. His eyes dropped to the camera slung over Eli's shoulder. "You take those pictures?" he asked, softer now. Eli unsnapped the case, pulled a few prints from his bag, set them on the table. A fisherman at dawn, fog curling around the dock, a torn family photo, Eli missing from the frame. Harold stared at the images. He didn't comment, just sat there for a long, still minute. Finally, he said, "Come home, Eli, we need you." Eli shook his head slowly. "I choose me now, and I don't regret it." Harold stood, no hug, no parting words, just a nod. A father realizing he could no longer bend his son. As he walked out, Sheila appeared, touching Eli's shoulder gently. "I don't know who you were," she said, "but I see who you are now. Clearer than any picture you've taken." Paul stopped by the cafe one afternoon, a folded flyer in his hand and that quiet encouragement always lurking behind his smile. "There's a community exhibit coming up," he said, sliding the paper across the counter, "for local photographers who've never shown work before." Eli wiped his hands on his apron, glanced down at the flyer, then back up. "I'm not really an artist," he muttered. Paul shrugged. "You don't have to be. Just live honestly. The photos will do the rest." That night, Eli sat in his small room above the bar, sorting through the pictures he'd taken. Some were blurry, a few overexposed, but each one carried something that felt real. He titled the series Roots and Wings. Roots for everything that once held him down: family, obligation, the invisible weight of always being needed but never seen. Wings for the city, the lens, the freedom to finally choose something that was his. His selected prints captured waves crashing against the pier at night, a lone fishing boat drifting into fog, a timed self-portrait of himself standing far off, back to the town, staring toward the horizon. The final piece, an old family photo, ripped at the edges. Eli's place in the picture was just outside the frame. The exhibit was held in a modest wooden room near the dock, string lights swaying above plastic tables and cups of cheap red wine. Sheila arrived first, wearing a simple dress, no makeup, but with the kind of smile that said, "I see you." Paul introduced him without fanfare. "Ellie Morgan," he said, "a storyteller in sea and silence." A middle-aged man paused at one photo. Pier No. 4. He studied it quietly, then turned. "There's something in this. Emotion," he said. "How much?" Eli hesitated, unsure how to price something he never expected anyone to want. "50?" he offered. The man handed him 2 20s and a 10 without blinking. Sheila slipped her fingers into Eli's hand. "From barrister to artist," she said. "Not bad at all." Ellie smiled, scanning the room. No one here knew he used to be the invisible oldest child, and for the first time he realized he didn't need them to. Chapter 6. Happiness Without Going Back. The next morning, Ellie's phone buzzed with a message from Sophie. "They left for Hawaii today. Hired a sitter this time. No one's arguing, but no one's saying your name either. Funny how they're only noticing your absence now." He stared at the screen for a moment, then tucked the phone away without replying. Through the dusty window of his room, Astoria's pale light began to stretch across the sky. He poured a cup of coffee, slung his camera over his shoulder, and stepped outside. The streets were damp, the air brisk but peaceful. Sheila met him at the corner, hands shoved in her coat pockets. "Looks like it might be sunny," she said, voice low like the tide. They walked together to the pier, the same one he'd photographed weeks ago, only now it felt different, familiar. Eli set up the tripod without a word, adjusted the lens, and looked through the viewfinder. A single wave rolled toward the rocks as the sun began to rise. He pressed the shutter, capturing the moment mid-crash. Then he whispered to no one in particular. "For the first time, I chose to live, not just survive." In slow motion, time seemed to fold, flashes of the life he'd quietly rebuilt. The ocean at dusk. The smell of coffee at dawn. Sheila laughing across the counter. Paul tapping his shoulder in class. A final photo. Eli and Sheila, side by side, backs to the camera, looking out over the water as morning fully broke. He didn't go back, but somehow that made all the difference. Sometimes walking away isn't giving up, it's choosing yourself. We spend so much of our lives trying to belong, trying to fix what's broken, trying to be enough. But freedom begins the moment we stop asking for permission to live our truth. The past may shape us, but it doesn't define who we get to become. If this story stirred something in you, I'd love to hear what part hit home. Drop a comment, share your thoughts, and don't forget to subscribe for more stories that speak to the heart. Thank you for being here. Until next time, keep choosing you.